We got a bidet! Hey everybody, and welcome back for another video. In today's video, we finally get to talk about Mando Season 3. There we go. We got our first episode this week, and it was pretty good, I would say. It was nice to see our favorite Mandalorian back in action, and actually a wide variety of things from this episode. So we're going to talk about the episode, talk about what we thought about it, and then, you know, hope to see some cool stuff next week. So this episode was kind of like almost like a montage of setting the tone for what's yet to come. I wouldn't say that this episode had anything super deep, but this episode starts off with the armorers putting together a helmet, a Mandalorian helmet. It looks smaller than the helmets we're used to seeing. And it turns out that there is a ceremony for I think they call them halflings, youngling. I forget what the specific name they call the children. But there's a young boy that's basically getting his initiation ceremony for becoming a Mandalorian, where he gets his helmet. And in the middle of this initiation, a huge crocodile-looking creature comes out of the water and interrupts the ceremony. And we get an action scene right off the bat where all the different Mandalorians are, trying to take this thing out. And really, it looks like none of their shots are doing anything. They go to the extent of even trying to plant like bombs on the top of its spine to try to weaken this beast, but nothing's really coming about. And to introduce our favorite Mando back into the season, we see the Naboo starfighter come flying in, and he uses a couple of proton torpedoes. They're torpedoes nonetheless from the starfighter to do some real damage to this crocodile creature. So we get this like cool intro with Mando, and then we kind of get it's setting up what's to come in this show, but it's also a reminder that Mando and the armorer had a conversation before where she told him, "You're no longer a Mandalorian because you removed your helmet," and they have this back and forth on how he could possibly become part of their group again, because he did a misstep. How can he make it up? And supposedly there's a way where if he bathes himself in these certain waters that are on Mandalore, he would be forgiven. But the problem is that when the big raid happened on Mandalore, so much stuff was destroyed that supposedly this area might be buried. And so Mando still wants to go and try to find it. It's in a cave somewhere. He tries asking where the cave is, and she doesn't give him like a super direct answer, but it will be, up to him to try to do his little hero's journey and find these waters so that he can bathe himself and then become part of the group again. So that's kind of what's going on with the Mandalorian culture part of it. Then Mando heads off to Navarro. And Sarah, do you want to cover what happens in Navarro?
Yeah, so he sees his good friend and buddy. Can you help me with his name? Is it Grief?
Grief. Yep.
Yeah. So he goes to see him and talk about, what's been going on, what's he's up to. We get a brief little the Grief wants him to live there basically. Like, why don't you settle down with Grogu and just we got a nice plot of land for you. You can be the marshal because we need a marshal. He says, "What about Cara Dune?" And we learn that she's on some other special task force, so she's not coming back, which we kind of all knew about anyway. But this is the show's way of taking care of that plot line. Um, so, Mando's not really interested in that because he wants to redeem himself with the Mandalorian and continue with that journey instead. We see a group of pirates that are wanting to go drink at what used to be the bar. But this city has been completely rebuilt from top to bottom, not even recognizable anymore, really. And so, what used to be the bar is now a school. But they're just, for whatever reason, really not taking that as an answer. So, Grief and Mando wind up having to take care of them. Mando shoots a couple of them down, and they leave one to kind of go tell the rest of their group that, like, hey, this isn't a place you can mess around with anymore. We see a statue of IG-11, or at least what's left of him, with some other pieces to kind of recreate the rest of his body, signifying, what he did to try to stand up for the town. And for whatever reason, Mando is convinced that he needs IG-11 to either help protect Grogu, or I don't really remember catching this in the show, but I've heard from some other channels that like he wants him to be able to detect if there's toxic gases in Mandalore when he goes there to try to bathe in those waters to see if it's safe. Which I didn't catch that in the show, but I believe that's kind of what he wants, kind of a dual purpose for IG-11. So he wants IG-11, right? And so Reef allows him to take the parts of IG-11 that are still there, and they need somebody to help fix them up. And Grief's like, I know just the guy. And who do we have, Jeremy?
We have the person behind you. Before we get to one of our favorite sequel trilogy characters, um, there's one small little scene that happens before they take him, and that's Mando tries to put him back together himself. But
Oh,
the
yes.
droid goes haywire and tries to, like, it defaults back to its bounty hunter type um, programming and tries to take them out. Uh, but then once I think Grief pushed the statue over, and there's or no, it wasn't Grief. It wasn't Grief. I forget who it was.
I thought it was
Maybe it was
Grogu.
Grogu. Was it Grogu?
I believe it was. But at that point in time, IG-11 was just a head, a shoulder, and an arm. Like,
Right.
there's not much to him.
Right. He was crawling around and um yeah, he was just the parts that he got from the statue. And because he couldn't fix IG, then they went to see this guy.
You gonna take it from here?
Oh, I thought you were gonna keep going. Um yeah, so Grief takes IG to or Mando and IG to see our favorite little dude. I'm pretty sure it's Babu Freak. Maybe not. Maybe it's just someone from the species, but nonetheless. Um,
Well, there's a whole set of like, I don't know, six of them that are all working on this thing in this little cave.
yeah, and so they're trying to fix IG, but from the little bit of language and muttering that the Babu character is saying, they refer to the droid as Poodoo, which means poop. So they kind of get the idea that it's a lost cause to try to put IG-11 back together and fix him. So they offer him a different droid. I can't remember if he actually takes that droid or not, though. I think,
My understanding is that IG-11's memory is gone, but if Mando can get some different pieces, they can still fix him.
uh,
He's gonna go try and find some different pieces to fix it.
okay. And I truly believe the reason why that he is picking IG as opposed to any random droid is because Mando does not trust droids. But he has worked with IG-11 and he's built up enough trust where I think he's the only one that he will trust in a scenario. So, yeah, Mando has to go off and find some of these parts. On his way out, though, he gets ambushed by the pirates again. And Mando, it's like him against, I think, six pirates in like an asteroid field. And um, pretty cool scene. Mando takes him out one by one until I think there's like one left. And that one is fleeing in a direction. And then Mando eventually sees where they're fleeing to. And there's like this big freighter that was, I don't know how he missed that, but um, it had a really, really cool new character on board. I think he's the dude in charge. He was like a grass looking, swampy creature on the ship. I'm hoping that this dude comes back later on in the show just because he looks so cool. But the pirate flees to this big ship and then they try to lock on to Mando to take him out. But Mando kind of uses the same maneuver that Han used when they were being pursued by the Empire in episode 5, where he flies at the bridge and then basically they lose uh, sight of being able to shoot at him. Mando like goes into uh, light speed, so they can't, catch him. It's a little bit different than episode 5 in that regard. But Mando does end up being able to um, get away. It's kind of cool because we get to see, what does Mando do while he's in light speed. We can see that he's sleeping. He's got his ship on cruise control, and we learn that Grogu can actually go between his little area and the main cockpit. There must be some sort of like tunnel underneath, because he drops out of his spot and just snuggles into Mando's lap. We do get a cool shot here of like what's going on around him in Lightspeed too, and we get a connection to Rebels where we see the space whales off in the distance. So that was kind of a nice touch there as well. Mando is heading towards going to see Bo-Katan with this trip and trying to see, where is she at? Is she willing to help him? And she's, you know, uh, beside herself, really, because since Mando had the dark saber, pretty much all of Bo-Katan's people left her, and she's kind of mopey in this castle that she has all to herself. And I think one droid, maybe two droids, that are helping her out. There was somebody that greeted Mando. I think it was a droid. But basically, she seems to not want any part of the things with Mando, but part of me feels that she might change her mind. Who knows? Um, but she tells him what information she can. It's not really much. But he leaves basically with the understanding of she doesn't want to help him and he's kind of on his own.
Well, we
So,
also learned that basically everybody abandoned her because she didn't get the black saber. So
dark
her
saber,
whole
but yeah,
yes,
I mentioned that.
sorry. Well, I just wanted to emphasize that like nobody believes in her anymore.
Yeah, she seems to be like a lost cause of her group. And then I think there's one last, was there one last thing in this episode? What was it? I'm drawing a blank. Was that the end of the episode? Like him leaving Bo-Katan?
I'm not sure to be honest.
It very well could be.
I think so.
Yeah, I think so too, because there really wasn't a cliffhanger, so to speak, in this episode, beside the fact of just planting the seeds of what's to come. So, uh, with that being said, what did you think of the episode? What did you think of the premiere?
I really liked it. There were some little things that maybe didn't make sense here or there as to why certain things were necessary or why Mando seemed like he needed them so much. Um, for me, for a while, I was wondering why he was really interested in getting IG-11 put back together. But I know your comment on, him not really trusting other droids, made that make a bit more sense, although I'm still not sure why he needs a droid in the first place, I guess, other than just for assistance. Um, I do really like this scene that's in my background. We've got Grogu, who, just like with the frogs, where he thought they were food, or, with like macaroon cookies that he had before. Like he just doesn't know what is his or not. And finally, there's a little creature that's smaller than him. So to him, it's almost kind of like having a pet or something, you know? So he's you can see in the picture he's hugging him, and then we weren't really sure if he wanted to like hug him as a pet or to try to eat him. But regardless, Mando was telling him no and stuff, and that whole scene I just thought was really cute, because when you're as small as one of these Babu freak creatures, your house doesn't really have to be that big. You don't need that much room. So the ceiling is so low that Mando had to crawl into here, like basically through a crawl space. And he's sitting crisscross applesauce, and he still has to duck his head because he doesn't have enough room to even sit up straight. So just seeing them in this really crowded little area, I don't know. I just thought it was fun. I thought it was kind of weird with the pirates wanting to drink at the school so much, especially with Grief offering, like, come on, we'll come have a drink in my office, basically, like essentially saying I'll give you a free drink if you follow me over here, and that just wasn't good enough for them. I don't know why they didn't just go find wherever the bar got moved to, because it's not like there's not a bar anymore.
Yeah, they mentioned that there was a mission that Grief did with one of the dude's family members. I think it was his dad. And the reward that they got from it when they split, supposedly that's he was saying something like you use that money to uh ruin our bar kind of a thing. And it was this was our spot and you did something, without our consent or permission or along those lines. And that's why they were so sticklers on it. Like, you ruined our spot, man.
Yeah, I gotcha. It just, even still, they're being kind of childish. So it
Yeah.
was kind of like, oh, okay, um, not your finest moment. Um, but I don't know. Overall, I liked the episode. I thought it was fun. It was a fun adventure, even if some of the spots seemed a little pointless. It was just fun.
Yeah, I'd probably say this episode was fun. It was probably a good way to just set things up. Like I said, we didn't get much of nitty gritty. We got a lot of what we already knew, kind of a thing. Like we knew that, well, I guess if you didn't watch Book of Boba Fett, maybe you wouldn't have known that Mando was, kind of outcasted because it was covered in that show. But we knew
Oh,
that,
that's right. See, here I was wondering, why are we seeing the armorer telling him again, you took off your helmet willingly, so you're not a Mandalorian, blah blah blah. I'm like, why are we hearing all of this again? I know we've already seen this, but you make a really good point that I think that was in Book of Boba Fett and not in the Mandalorian show. And even though they kind of crossed over in this past season, um, it's still not the exact same show. So having them kind of repeat that scene makes a bit more sense now.
yeah. So I think that's kind of why they did it. Of course, if you follow the Boba Fett show and everything too, you probably didn't need that like us, but um, probably the reason why they did it, and maybe a little more clarification on what he actually has to do to regain uh, his ability to be a part of their group, so he can sit with them again. Uh, I thought some of I thought probably my favorite part of this episode really wasn't anything that happened per se, but it was the diversity of all the different alien species things that we saw. Like when he went back to Navarro, we saw so many different, like we saw the pirates for one, and even they were a couple of different species, I think. We saw quacky and monkey lizards in the trees. That was hilarious. And then we saw like little critters in the streets. Um, the new grass guy. I don't really know what his name was, but he was a cool looking dude.
I believe I
Um,
referred to him as the seaweed monster.
yeah. So the diversity of the episode was my favorite part of all the different species. But it was fun. There were some things that I could see were kind of pointless or maybe a little off. Um, Especially the scene with IG-11 in the office. I think Mando would have dealt with that situation better. Like I don't think he would miss so many times as he was in the office. You know, he's a very, very good bounty hunter, and I believe he has really good aim. So I don't know why he would have such crappy aim, but maybe that's why you roll for disadvantage when you have ranged attacks in point blank range for Dungeons and Dragons. Um, yeah, I like the space battle. That was really cool to see. I was wondering if maybe this is gonna foreshadow some more stuff later on because we really haven't seen Mando do, different types of maneuvers in space and dogfighting combat. So we kind of needed that little bit of character development to maybe understand how awesome he's going to be later on when he might have to do something with his Naboo starfighter. So I got my fingers crossed that we see more of that stuff. As far as the stuff with Bo-Katan, again, it was just one of those things probably to show that she's around and she's relevant, and she'll probably be in stuff later on in this season. Um, that was
What do you think of the ceremony at the beginning of the episode?
At first I thought it was supposed to be Mando, but we eventually see some characters that are of age and wouldn't actually fit if it was Mando. Specifically, the dude that Mando like beat up in the Book of Boba Fett, the really big Mando dude with the huge gun, because he's at the front of the group during this ceremony, and I can't remember whose video I watched. It could have been Star Wars Theory or Angry Joe, but one of them had said that they thought that maybe it was that dude's son because all the Mandalorians were facing away from the ceremony, like they were looking at each other as the kid came down in like procession. But the only person that was facing the ceremony was that big Mandalorian dude. And the helmet was fairly resemblant of the bigger dude as well. So maybe that's what's going on there. Um, but I thought the little battle thing was pretty cool. Um, I think it was more of a for show type thing. Like it's cool to see their culture with this little ceremony, but the fact that, Mando kind of rides in at the perfect moment to shoot it with his starfighter, 'cause I don't believe he was there before that time because he was outcasted. I don't believe he was, parked right next door and he said, "Oh wait, let me go get my starfighter," and then he'll go and, take care of the monster. I think he
It
just
was the
happened.
knight in shining armor.
Pretty much. He showed up at the right time and helped out his companions.
I do think the monster was a little over strengthened, overpowered. I feel like they should have been able to do more damage to it, and especially when they put those detonators on it. I thought like, okay, now it's gonna kind of blow to chunks and it's gonna be pretty powerless.
That reminds me, this creature probably had one of the most graphic things I've ever seen in Star Wars, and I thought that was kind of hilarious. When Mando shot the dude with the creature with his torpedoes, like chunks of his insides flew everywhere, like his intestines and stuff. And I was like, whoa, I was not expecting that from Star Wars. Um, so I think
It
that
was
shock factor,
awesome.
it was awesome with that shock factor was like pretty cool. I don't think I've seen that before in Star Wars. Um, so yeah, that was really neat. If anything, we got an exploding monster in Star Wars. But other than that, I would probably say I enjoyed the episode. Was it the best? No, I'm pretty sure we've had better episodes in the past, but it's a good setup for what's yet to come in the show. And there's probably a lot of cool surprises on the way. So I look forward to it. And there's been some people that um have more popular channels than us that were able to watch the second episode already and make videos in preparation for when it comes out. And they have said they can't say what's in it, but they have said that they really propel the story forward and that Bo-Katan gets something really cool in that episode. So I look forward to seeing that. If you enjoyed this type of video, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications. That way you are alerted when we talk about Mandalorian more in the future. Plus all of our other different discussions. We talk about Bad Batch, which is currently going, and we have our weekly Shoot the Sheaf podcast that we started recently that we've had a lot of fun doing. And because we've had a lot of fun, we hope you've had a lot of fun as well. Um, Please drop us a like if you liked the video, and then drop us a comment letting us know your thoughts about Mando Season 3, Episode 1 premiere. And then, as always, everybody, thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.